Thank you for having me. My name is Doug Sekerski. I'm a lifelong resident of Cochranton. I live in Meadville now. And I've been a local historian for as long as I can remember. I grew up in Cochranton, hung out around with the seniors, my elders in town, hung around with Mark, and that's probably where I got into the history stuff as far as learning about it and everything. So over time, I've been collecting stuff in my collections on local history. I live in Meadville now, so I've been doing a lot of stuff that's local to Meadville and the area. Mark does everything here in Cochranton, which I grew up with and that. So tonight what we're going to do is I have a presentation here in, it's going to be a history presentation versus a history lesson. It's a lot of photographs, it's all photographs of not just around Cochranton, but around the area, around Meadville. Meadville's a lot of the stuff what I do now, in around Vernon, Westby, Client Lake, whatever. I do a lot of things. And I've probably got, last time I checked, over 50,000 images in my computer system from film and negatives and pictures I've collected over the years. And so tonight we're gonna look at a lot of images in that. Hopefully brings back memories. You can talk about it, think about it. I remember this, I remember that, I saw this, I grew up there. I can do different things to look at. So once we're done, if there's a certain presentation later, I mean, I've got everything in my archives that you can imagine from anything. I mean, you can only imagine what things are out there that people took pictures of and filmed. And again, a lot of the stuff I have, I process it all myself, the film, the negatives, the video, the technology, we can do that. So we're gonna go back and just gonna look at pictures. I'm gonna talk a little bit about them. And then hopefully it brings back some memories. And they're a little bit of everywhere. There's no real order for what I did tonight. I just kind of threw a whole bunch of stuff together. A lot of it's around some Meadville area and that. And there's some Cochranton stuff in here. I'm going to leave most of the Cochranton stuff to Mark since it's he would have more of that than I would. But so this picture here is of Cochranton coming off the covered bridge. We're looking in towards town here. So this is around 1913, I think, which is a neat little picture there I had for a cover shot. So we'll get started here and just talk about a little bit of stuff here. This is just aerial shot of Cochranton, 1947. Just shows what the town looks like. Back in the day, you can kind of pick out some things, the bridge coming in, you can see where Mort goes at and see some of the things, how it's changed. This is our little community and we grew up in, and a lot of history here. And a lot of things in history that I'm sure Mark's talked about and I talked about on my talks, about how all the small towns are, relatively the same for what they do and the communities get involved in that. So we'll just start from there and go ahead with some pictures here. And again, these are some postcard pictures of how the main street, every town, Main Street, whatever you call it, still Main Street. It's where your stores, where people come, whatever, to meet and gather. Again, you can tell by the old buildings and that and how things have changed today versus then. A few things may be here today, but most of them are gone. Let me look back, just another quick picture here. The pictures I'm going to go through tonight are probably from the 50s, 60s and that. I'm going to go some older stuff and that, but I'm going to try and bring stuff that you guys can relate to. So again, just another picture in town, the brick streets and the little kids out running around and just how things were different. Peaceful, quiet, maybe just as busy, who knows. So we're going to start and we're just going to work through some images here. So again, this image here is near Sagertown. Covered bridge, we had a covered bridge. Covered bridges are all over, that was the way they were built back then. But what makes this neat, if you're going from Meadville to Sagertown, if you're familiar with the McGuffintown Bridge, the blue bridge, and then the yellow one in Sagertown they're tearing down now, well this is the McGuffintown Bridge. This is the late 1800s, 1890s I think is when it was, 1897, 98, somewhere in there. But this is where the McGuffintown Bridge crossed French Creek going towards Sagertown. And that vehicle is actually a steam-powered vehicle that you're riding on. So it was just a neat picture that I have in my archives of how things have changed, the roadways. We're going to talk about everything from construction to building to police to fire to everything. So, but this is just a neat picture near Sagertown of traveling. What it would have been like in a, dressed up to go for a ride in your open-air car there, just for a little ride. Let's talk about Meadville for a minute here. Cochranton's our city and our home, but yet when you wanted to go to town, you went to the city. And Meadville was the city where you would go. It was the big hub where you would have went back in the day. We didn't have the malls or all the big stores we have today, or the interstate or things like that to travel. So basically this is a shot of Meadville 1950. Hit the next slide. And I just kind of labeled some things in case people want to get their bearing. The market house up in the corner, and then the professional building is still there today. So you can kind of see some of the other things, Lafayette Bank, or Lafayette Hotel where PNC Bank was at. And then basically the rest of this here is gone. You know, much as the small towns change, the cities change. This is all the downtown mall, the 4-lane highway comes here to bypass. You know, this is all gone. So this is, you know, even a big city changes, redevelopment. You know, this will be the oldest part of the city. The train station's here, the train tracks will be here, and then the city grew out from there, from the city hall, the trolley office, things like that. The city would just grow, but through time, things, you know, buildings get old, burned down, torn down, whatever. Again, so just to look at how the big cities still change. Our courthouse, which is here in Meadville, is 1947 view of the Crawford County Courthouse. It was built in the 1800s, and it has that distinct 1800s architecture. And again, it went under some changes here in the 1950s. 1950s, it went under, really did all the renovations. The existing courthouse went through a major change. Next picture shows that this is the courthouse we recognize today. And then, of course, they built onto it again today around the courthouse. As things grow, things change, but this is how our courthouse has changed in the area. Business and industry, I do a lot of talks on the business and industry. Many of you remember the Visco, probably some of you parents, grandparents might have worked there over the years. Major industry, you know, around here. Not just here, but Meadville had a lot of industry that supported everything. And of course, Visco's employed thousands of people, had the bus line there. This was just a day after work, coming home to catch the bus home just after a long day of work in the 1940s. Again, in the area, tool and die, we've heard the phrase tool and die capital of the world. That's what Meadville is and around the area. But it goes for all the shops that we had around here. Barrett Tool Machine was just one of the many shops that made their name around here. There are several patents today that come back to Meadville in the machining industry, from tooling, gauges, fittings, all kinds of components in the industry field that date back, you know, to being made here in Meadville, along with other products in that. Just an aerial shot here of Talon. Many people may know somebody that worked at Talon or worked there, or grew that grandparents or whatever might have worked there. We have Champion Dearmament Tool here, which would be Channel Lock today. The Krosky Tool over there, which has been there for over 100 years. Again, big industry in the area. I do a whole show on Talon and the zipper and how it grew and what it grew from in Meadville, how it started. Same thing with Champion Dearmament, Channel Lock Tools, how they started out. Basically, everything started out in a small garage behind somebody's house somewhere, and it grew from there. But again, this is in Meadville, and what's kind of neat is you think, okay, you drive right into Meadville. Well, this road here, South Main Street, was actually a dead-end road just past across the tool there again. It ended into a brickyard. And then Liberty Street, which runs up behind it, was the main route into the city. So you would have came up behind into the city that way, was the main route into town. And this area here was the all industrial side, which was the dead end road, until 322 became the road between Meadville and Cochranton. Another thing that I find interesting that I do a lot of talks about are the car dealerships around here. Small town, big town, little town, doesn't matter where you're at. In Meadville and Cochranton, we had dealerships. You think of a car dealership today, you think of Community Chevrolet or Holland Ford, where there are hundreds of cars on the lot. Big buildings, big cars, lots of inventory. And back in the day here, Brooks Brothers was a Dodge dealership. They were there for decades, and the longest deal in town was their motto. But again, this is on North Street where Walgreens is today. They were one of the many dealerships that were in the area. That we're going to look at a few of them that you might remember or might have bought a car from. Jim Taylor Motors, this is 1960. They were here through the 1990s, 2000s. They were here in Meadville. Again, started out small like everybody else, and grew with the many dealerships. Again, Milton Bowser Motors, Park Avenue, which later was Griffin Motors, if you remember the building in Meadville, was a Dodge dealership. Again, Griffin Motors in Meadville, when they started out on North Street, so they were on North Street where North Main Street crosses. The building is still there today. And, you know, Griffin Motors, of course, we know, they started out here in Cochranton. Their building is still there today. It's still was the Y, and Giuseppe's Pizza and the beer distributor was there. But again, they had their starts here in Cochranton. And what was neat about a lot of the small town dealerships, they didn't have the inventory like you would today. You know, they may have 1 or 2, 3 cars on their lot that were new and a couple of used cars because they couldn't afford that or didn't have that volume of for inventory. So, you know, they'd have a couple cars to show you, but again, they sold gas, had service repair, and what they would do is have 2 cars. So we have 2 new cars to show you from 1950. And you think, okay, today, no big deal. We have a 2022, 2024 car in the dealership. It wasn't a big deal, but back in the day, it was a huge deal. So when the new cars came in, everybody came to town. They would make a big event out of it, the dealerships would. People from town all around would want to see, let's go look at the new 1950 Dodge or Chevy or Ford. And so the dealerships would set up these big events where everybody in town came. Everybody wanted to see what was going on with the new cars. You know, we didn't have TVs, you didn't have the internet, you had phones, and you had the newspaper. So if you wanted information or to see what was going on, you went to these events to be a part of it. And you can see there's just packed full of people in that little dealership to look at a couple cars. Where today, you just look on TV or look on the internet or whatever to see it. But again, this would have been, you know, there have been food there and events and things to do to show off for the dealership for the new cars. And this is just here in Cochranton. So you can imagine the other towns doing the same thing that had the little dealerships. Again, Cochranton Ford Sales, another little small, this is right where Mark was just showing that picture before I got here, was where this building was at, right where the borough building's at today and the fire hall's to the right of it. But again, come see the new 54. They've got 1, maybe 2 cars sitting there. So they didn't have the inventory like the big cities would, but yet they were still a full Ford dealership. A lot of these dealerships grew into big dealerships and moved elsewhere and grew. But again, every little small town, and just like Cochranton, we had several dealerships. You had the Buick, you had Dodge, you had Chrysler, you had Ford. And you're thinking, in a small town, to have that many dealerships. Well, back then, just think about the exposure. You had to have them for people to know what you had. In Meadville, again, back to Meadville, Tom Kirkpatrick Buick is a name I'm sure many of you have heard or bought cars. They started on Park Avenue, ended up moving out into Vernon Township for years before they closed up, retired. Again, another big dealership that was started out small and grew. You may recognize the name, Buick dealership here in town, which is over here on Adams Street there. Again, small little shop, but they're a certified Buick dealership. You can get your Buick service there, bought there, parts there, sold gas, sold parts. Again, underwent changes throughout the years as things grow. Service stations, I do a talk on service stations in Crawford County on the mom and pop shops and how the service industry has changed over the years. Basically, anytime up until the 70s, if you wanted to sell gas, you made a phone call to the distributor and said, I want to sell your gas. They dug a hole, put a tank in the ground, and put a pump up, and you were in business. You didn't need permits, you didn't need DEP, you didn't need permission. You wanted to sell gas, anybody could sell gas. That's why you see in so many of these little towns, these little gas stations that popped up everywhere or had 1 or 2 pumps because it was easy. You wanted to sell fuel, they'd sell you fuel. You didn't have the regulations like we did until the 70s. But this is just an Atlantic station here in Cochranton. That's where the auto parts was for years. This is built for my dad, Skip Sekerski, back in 1968. He ran the station here for a few years in the 70s, and it was sold and different people operated it. But again, the little town of Cochranton, which Mark can probably attest to, that there were probably over a dozen service stations in this town at one point. And you think about Cochranton, it's not that big to have 12, 13 gas stations selling gas. Like I said, it was easy. Gas was cheap, anybody could do it, so we all did it. All remember the Quaker State, the Anderson's Quaker State across the street. All 4 corners of this red light had a service station at one point. Mr. Anderson would come out, Mr. Turner would come out and pump your gas, wipe the window, check your fluids, whatever. Get your car washed there, the lubrication light service work there. Again, that was the style of the service back in the day where your cars needed service, unlike some of our cars today. And it was just convenient. The other corner, McFate's Ford, it was a Ford dealership. Here we go with the Ford dealership in town. Another one, this is McFate's Ford. He had the Pennzoil, he had the gas station. We know it, the younger folks will know it as Dignall's forever. I grew up with it being Dignall's, and then currently the Country Fair sits there today. But again, it would have been a grand, big curved glass, new modern station, 1950s. They sold oil and had cars, and I got pictures of the dealership with all the new Fords lined up there. But again, every little town had that opportunity to be a big dealership. And this was pretty much the store box, what you would see. You know, corner service station, any town, any part, this is in Meadville. This was a stamp, you buy it, they'd set you up with a little block building, a couple bay doors, pumps, a sign, you were in business. It was that simple to sign the lease. Back in the 50s and that, you could get the building, the lease, and everything set up there for probably around $40,000 to $50,000. Doesn't sound like much then, but back then it was a lot, and you could sell gas, and you were in business. And so that's why every little town, every corner service station, you know, you could pick that up and move it and put a different name to it, and that's pretty much what you saw in the area growing up. And this was a service that you got, you know, you can remember, check your tires, pump your gas, check your fluids, you know, and 2 or 3 guys would do that, and they made a living doing that at these stations. And this was here in Meadville, North Street, as their service station, but this is how they operated back in the day. And they made a living at it for a long time. And here we are looking on Adams Street here again, right next door to where we're at. The landing station here again, pumping the gas, oil cans are there, check your oil, air pumps there to check your air. You know, they did that full service on your vehicles back in the day when you got your gas there with the oil pumps there. Doug buildings right across the street there, Cochranton Times. And there's a picture of the station there, and the lights are on at night. Again, a little smaller station sat right in that parking lot right there. We'll talk a little about Meadville here downtown. I'm sure Mark's gone through some stuff of downtown Cochranton and the stores and businesses here. But we'll look at Meadville here for a little bit, because like I said, when you went to town, you went to Meadville, everything was downtown. You know, this was the city. We didn't have the Vernon Township of the mall, you didn't have Erie, you didn't have the big plazas or things like that. You wanted to go shopping for meat, you went to the meat markets. You wanted shoes, you went to the shoe store. You wanted bread, you went to the bread store. You know, you went to these individual shops downtown to find what you wanted. You wanted women's clothes, you went to women's clothes. You wanted men's clothes, you went to Walden's. You know, there was different places you went for certain items. And so you shopped downtown for variety, and you get to see the signage and what was going on downtown, and how things have changed. Again, another look at Chestnut Street. You know, you got Prince's Store, you got the Academy, Bob's Home Radio, Jack's Pharmacy, Hunter News, so many of these little shops that were around for decades that you may remember, and the streets are packed. You know, this was daily life. You went to work, you had to go to town, this is what you did. This is just a neat picture, I like it. It's Chestnut Street in Meadville, looking up Chestnut Street from River Street, which is of course no longer there today. So about right here is where the downtown mall entrance would be, looking up Chestnut Street. But it's Christmas time. Now if you can go back and look at this, you know, imagine if this was in color. All the neon signs of the businesses, all the Christmas lights, how colorful that would have been. Seeing all that neon lit up through there, and all the storefronts lit up through there, how that would have looked during the time to go window shopping and things like that. Just a different time of how the cities were with the signage and the advertising compared to today. Again, we're looking up Chestnut Street here, Meadville 1951, daily shopping. I mean, this is busy, parking on both sides, but this is a day in town which you would see. You know, it was a big event to come to, you know, if you had to come to town for something. So again, this is where you had all your retailers were in town, and you just come to town. This was what you did. You rode the bus, walked to town, and took the train, whatever you had to do. In the Cochranton, we had the same thing. You see a lot of these big stores in Meadville we're talking about, but again, Rexall Drugs here, May's Rexall Drugs here in town, was here forever. And this is a picture in front of the store here. The building is still there today, but it was Rexall Drugs for years, one of the local in town. Shorts Hardware sat on the corner where my dad's gas station. Actually, this was torn down to build the gas station here, the Atlantic station where my dad was at. But again, a big hardware store. The building had several prior uses to that. Before that, a big 3-story building. Again, this is stuff that I'm sure Mark will go over a lot of the history of the building and what it was used for. But again, your small town had everything that you would need in a big city. Main Street here on Adams Street, Oaks Hardware, John Deere dealership. Again, washers, dryers, Oaks Hardware. You can see the other appliance stores beside it. Your little small town of Cochranton had everything in it that you would need, like you would find in any big city. And again, here, we were just talking about the fire on Main Street in 62, and that was it. One other show I do a lot of, which I think is kind of neat, is the storefronts. You know, back then when you advertised your business, you did it through a storefront. You know, you put your displays up so people could see it, you window shop. You didn't have, you know, like I said before, the TV or the internet. You had the newspaper, word of mouth, whatever. So all these stores downtown here, any of those small towns wanted to promote what they were selling, you had the storefronts. They would change through the seasons throughout the year. different times of the year you would change. I love this one here around Christmas time. Imagine just the kids all stuck to the glass looking at all the toys. This is here in Meadville, 1951, and I do a lot of the shops downtown around Meadville and that had storefronts, because then it got to be a competition. There's always stuff going on, who had the best storefront, and the Chamber of Commerce put on a lot of things for the holiday seasons and that, on storefronts and that, who would decorate the best, but that was your main point of advertising. You had to let people know what you had to get them into your store, so your storefront was your first line. A lot of your stores today, you have a door. Go in the door, go into a shop that doesn't have a storefront because you know what you're going into. You go into Walmart, you go through doors. There's no glass fronts anymore. A lot of their shops are that way, but back in the day, you wanted to let them know what you had. You went through, and this is again, downtown Meadville, shopping on a Friday night. This is, again, 1951. But I always like looking at this picture. I got a couple different ones, and I look at it because of how things have changed today, and I look at how they're dressed compared to what people dress today when they go out. People are dressed very well for going out on an evening, doing their daily shopping, whatever, but I just always, in my pictures, in my history, I always can tell the time frames by how people look and how they dress and how things are, how it changed. But here we are, they're shopping in town, and just a night out on town in Meadville shopping. Theaters, we're going to talk a little bit about theaters here for a short bit. The Academy Theater, Meadville had 4 theaters going at one time. They had the Academy, the Park Theater, Mead Theater, and the Victor Theater. You could see any type of show, live show, Western, cartoon, current movies were there, all operational at the same time. And it was, many of your small towns had one theater or whatever, and you could still see different shows. And so you were fortunate. You wanted to go out to town, you could go to Meadville and watch a live show. You could stop at the Academy. You could stop at the Park Theater on Park Avenue and see a new show. We got Ginger Rogers playing here. So there was a lot of different shows that would play through the years at the different theaters. Again, this is Water Street and Chestnut Street. Of course, the Mead Theaters were the third one, and it played cartoons and westerns. That's all it ever played, was cartoons and westerns. So if you wanted to go see a western or cartoon, you went to the Mead Theater. But again, you look at the buildings, you look at the downtown, and you can tell that this is the oldest part of Meadville by looking at the buildings. 1894, I think it says in there, the construction, the design of the buildings. You can tell it's an older building, the part of the city which was older there. But again, every window, every storefront, everything's full to get people to come and do their business there. Of course, Meadville, or here at Cochranton, we have the Irish Theater. We have the grand opening down here. Things have changed, the building's still the same. It's undergone a lot of great changes over the years, and it's glad to see it's still here, still being in use. Drive-ins. We didn't go to the theaters, we went to the drive-in. Lakeside Drive-In in Pine Lake on Route 18, 1954. I'm sure most people here remember they've been to a drive-in once or twice, 3 times maybe. It was a big thing back in the day. Everybody going to the drive-in. This is the one in Pine Lake, and this was the Airways up on 19, behind where the mall was at up there, where the Vernon place is now. Again, the Airways drive-in. I remember as a kid going up there and watching movies. With my mom and dad would take us up there to watch a movie. So again, you got to go to see the big drive-in. If you didn't go to a theater, you went to a drive-in. Another one topic we go over is we talk about the old towns and history and how things change is just Chestnut Street, Meadville, but you look at the building, you look at the architecture, you look at the design, the windows, the design of the building itself. The men that built them took their time, knew what they were doing, knew what they wanted, the appearance they wanted. They were grand buildings. You can look at every city around and see the old buildings and the old parts of town and how things have changed. But again, as times grow, things change. Can't necessarily, maybe you can't heat them, the electric subpar, the heating subpar. So sometimes it's easier to tear it down and build new. And so in Meadville, we saw a lot of that, to tear it down and just build there today. A shoebox with windows. Where's all the character that the old timers had in building these buildings? You took away that grand building with all the design to put up bricks and glass. It was cheaper and easier, but that's how things changed. That was the modern look or the modern appeal to it. And again, we still kept the storefront look in the front, but again, they took away all that character. The Crawford store. I'm sure everybody here's probably shopped at the Crawford store in Meadville. This is on Chestnut and Water Street. and it looks a little dark there, but 1954, the Crawford store was there forever. I can always hear everybody tell me stories about what floor they like the best on the store. I've got pictures of every floor on the inside, from furnishing, the carpets, the clothing, to everything else. It was a big retailer downtown. You didn't have Walmarts, Kmarts, and things like that. The Bates Block on Chestnut Street here in Meadville. Again, Meadville had a lot of industry that's supported by the towns and that. Tool and die shops were here. Buildings behind it were PA Tool and Gauge started. There was other tool shops. This was a chocolate factory or confection factory in the 1800s. There was a lot of candy companies in the city in the late 1800s that made all types of confections. This is one of the buildings here. But again, the small shops, some radio, pharmacy. Bates Company was a music store. You had Hunter's News. You had a retail shop here. So again, you had all these little shops that everybody supported their town with. Little restaurants and diners everywhere. We all saw them in towns. We see them everywhere. This was just one on Chestnut Street. And in Meadville at that time, this place was known for the best pies. Everybody had their little niche. Everybody said this place had the greatest pies for dinner time. Banks. First National Bank in Meadville, Chestnut and Market Street. Again, banks back in the day were built grandeur, big buildings, marble, stone. We've all seen how banks were built back then. We see the old pictures of the banks. Today, little buildings, you look at town here, there's little buildings, you go in there, you took away all that grandeur on these big old bank buildings that got today. This building was taken down in the late 59, 60. Murphy's. Everybody's probably shopped at Murphy's once, twice, 10 times. I remember as a kid going to Murphy's, going into the basement, going to the toy section. I remember that a lot in Murphy's. Woolworths was just down the road from Murphy's there. But again, big retailers downtown in the city. They weren't out in the malls. They weren't out in the outskirts of town. They were all still downtown in the cities. Another storefront. This is at the end of Water Street. You can tell by the buildings, the old style buildings. But again, you have Sears. You got a home improvement store. Montgomery Ward's was just down there. But a lot of the big retailers' names that you're hearing, those were were downtown where you went to find things. Sears and Roebuck, all the stores. And all that area down there, of course, was at its fate by modernization there. Grant store, Chestnut Street. We're looking up Grant Street. This is after the Lafayette Hotel was gone. But again, Grant's was downtown. Another retail store that we had downtown in Meadville. And of course, Grant's went up on Hill in Vernon Township in 1970, which later became Kmart. Remember Kmart with Blue Lake specials. Of course, had the restaurant in Kmart, had the auto center, and that was the big thing. Everybody going to Kmart where you can get everything done up there, and it was up there for many years. And then the mall was built. Montgomery Ward's built the far end. If you remember being in the mall, Kmart at the one end, all the little shops and stores along the sides there, pizza shop and fashion bug, and the gold mine was the arcade. And spent a lot of time up there as a kid. Parents would go shopping and give us a couple dollars, send us to the gold mine, to the arcade, or Toys R Us was up there. But again, this was when you started seeing things changes in the 70s and 80s, where they started going outside the town to get bigger, more room to build some of their projects. Something you don't always see, but it's just kind of neat. One of those things is house moving. They're moving a house across Smock Bridge here in Meadville. And Smock Bridge is today, we've crossed it, there's a center divider, the lights on. Well, when it was originally built, there was no dividers, it was just an open 4-lane bridge. But they're moving a section of the house here. These old trucks winch it up, stop and block it, pull ahead, and keep pulling across the bridge, and probably bring the other 2 sections of the house with it. But that was common. Back in the day, you didn't tear things down like we do today. You saved them, you moved them, rebuilt them, repurposed them. This was something that they did. Here we are at Adams Street, Cochranton. Right down here, moving a house. There's, they move a house anywhere. They put it up on boards, put it on dollies, and move the power lines, and they're moving a house. And so that was quite common back in the day. A lot of companies did that, and they just didn't tear them down like they do today. They were built much better, and so they saved what they could save, but here they are moving a house here just in town. Again, Kennedy Hill, Vernon Township here in Meadville, right where 79 did cross today. It's not there, but they're, again, moving a house up the hill. They got a couple, 2 to 3 trucks there pulling the house up the hill. Power company there to move the power lines, move an entire house, So again, things were different back then. You don't see that too often. You'll see them move maybe a shed or something small, but to see them move an entire house like that, something you don't get to see too often anymore. They just tear them down and build something new. Who remembers Cutters? Everybody went to Cutters. This is where their main store here on 322. This is 322, a little 2-lane, rough-looking blacktop. That's where the store was at there in Cutters. They originally started in Meadville, Poplar Street. They had a fire down there and ended up relocating out here in Vernon Township. And of course, we all remember that store, how big it grew, and had a little bit of every junk you could imagine you didn't need to have there. But again, it was a store I remember as a kid going there many times. And Cutters saved more, so we sell for less, discount store. I mean, it's just kind of neat how things have changed, how narrow the road is. But again, Vernon Township was growing at the time too. This is 1956. Eddie's Football. Everybody's Eddie's. This is the original building, which is where they're at today, but this was across the street from where they're at. That's where they originally started, was right across from where they're at today. It burnt down in the early 40s, early 50s. It burnt down, and then they built across the street where they're at today. But of course, everybody's ate there for years, but you get a steak burger for 35 cents and a hot dog for $0.25, so that's usually a pretty good deal. So this picture, which I thought kind of neat, is the roundabout where today is, the Big I, we call it. Airways Diner up where the drive-in's up here in the corner. The Beacon Inn, if you remember the Beacon Inn. This is 98, 322 towards Client Lake, 19 coming up. So we got the big roundabout here today. This is the W.L. Dunn building where they sold International Tractors. This is Flick's Appliance today. This would be Bo Rock's Bar today. Community Chevrolet would be over here. Smith Gray would have been right in there, dealerships. So it's changed over the years. Again, things started moving out into the township, things started getting bigger and out, started developing it. But it was a mainstay. You come from Pittsburgh to Erie, you traveled 19 and 98 to Erie. You didn't have the interstate. So this was the road, this was the busy road. You had one gas station, 2 gas stations, 3 gas stations, 4 gas stations, 5 gas stations, all on the road right there side by side, because you had the traffic. You had 6 gas stations, you had one here, you had the Beacon Inn there. So it was a different time, but this was the main route for travel, was 19 up through here. If you want to go to Client Lake, you went to Client Lake, you want to go to Erie, you kept traveling on Route 98. But again, this was the time they were starting to develop the area out through there. City Coal Supply in Meadville, boat place today. We didn't have, back in the day, you didn't have Home Depot or Lowe's or Target. You needed your home supplies. They sold cement, concrete, gravel, but they also had their inside, did the home improvement. Your nuts and bolts, your fabrics, your blinds, your windows, flooring, anything you needed on a smaller scale. City Coal Supply had it in the city. There were several other smaller shops, but they were a big one that were around here. They started in the 1800s selling driveway stones and pipes and flues and furnaces and things like that, but they grew into the home improvement side. Norma's Bakery, just on Water Street in Meadville, again, mom and pop shops everywhere. That's what we grew up on. A bakery here in town was around for many years. This was an old gas station building, converted into a bakery. If you remember in the 80s and 90s, Maselli's produce was sold out of that building. I remember when Maselli's had it, we bought our produce from them. Again, just another small shop in town, a little home bakery in Meadville, 1951. A lot of people talked about the pastries and that would come out of there. Again, specific. You wanted, pastries or whatever. You went to certain stores for that versus going to Giant Eagle and getting everything. You went to a certain shop to get what you needed to get back in the day. Looking at Water Chestnut Street here at Water Grants, the Lafayette Hotel, Hotel Savoy. Again, this is right close to the railroad. The railroad would come in, people would stay in town, they would stay at the immediate hotels. The restaurants and that were at the bottom, the bars were all at this area in the town. You had the hotel there, and then of course you went through the city to find the businesses and shops. But again, it was a big business in the time, in Meadville at that time with the hotel industry and such. The lunch counter at Grants. If we went to Grants in downtown, this was the lunch counter they had, just like Kmart had the restaurant when they had the up on the hill, this was the downtown, was the lunch counter. Again, you do your shopping, and you got tired or hungry or whatever, you go eat, you go finish your shopping, whatever. But this was common back in the time. Gee's Appliance Store, toy section. Always thought it's a good picture of the kids and the toys, all the toys set up to look at and everything. Be kind of fun to beyond those little toys today playing there. I guarantee you there's no plastic toys there. They're probably all nice heavy steel toys that they're going to be riding around on. But again, another shop in town for the kids to go and get what you wanted to get. You had a little bit of everything. Joyland Rollerball. I'm sure everybody here, somebody had to go skate in the Joyland. They had their own buses. They'd come through town. They'd go through areas to pick up people, take you there for the night, for the evening, to go roller skating, and then bring you back home. It was a big thing. I've got tons of pictures of inside events, parties, events that was held there. The building's still there today on Baldwin Street outside of Meadville. But again, this is something that kids would do on the weekend or evening. You'd go out and go roller skating. We talked a lot. This whole night's been about small business and small towns. We're focused here on Meadville a little bit. But this is the meat market. National Meat Market's opening up. You can see the advertising for it. The community supported the town, the people. Just like here, just like Meadville, just like any little town, you had a small business, you came out to support them. You can see the crowds waiting to get in. You can see the advertising on the vehicles. And it was a new meat market that was opening up, and everybody wanted to see what it was about. And so today you just go to Walmart. Today you just go here. You just go there. So it was a different time where people supported a lot of the smaller businesses. Fairs and parades, we'll go through them real quick here. Again, every year we have a fair, every year we have a parade, every town everywhere has the same thing going on. 1947 here, we're looking up the town here with the animals, the Done Building, Irish Theater, looking up the main street here. Again, it was always something interesting. Miss Cochranton, 64, 65. And then this is the fairgrounds, the fireman's building's on the left, home shield building's still there. Again, nothing changed with these or what people are wearing and how things change. But again, it's always the community events, different areas, different times. Even this is in Guys Mills, this is Randolph. The little community of Randolph had a little parade. This is the bar for Randolph starting a little parade. All the townsfolk come out and support their area, their town. You can see they're pretty good turnout. But again, all these little neighborhoods that have their own little shows or events to promote themselves. Crawford County Fair, countless stuff on the fair. It's all it stayed the same. The pictures all look the same rides and that. Just other than would change would be the display tents, the different items that they'd have on display. Again, to see how it's changed over the years is pretty neat. But it's basically stayed the same for what it is. We've got our local people here. We got Cubby Dunn here, Crawford County Fair in 1950. He was a mainstay at the fair now, so it's part of it. Dunn's been part of the fair board there forever. But this is the picture of Cubby I had in 1950 at the fairgrounds there, and racing his horses up there, which they've done, they still do today. Special events. This is Meadville, 1947. Meadville's done a lot with Halloween events, Halloween parades. It was always a weekend event. This is Diamond Park. There's a corner of the stage facing the front of the courthouse. There's thousands of people here. They would always have big events downtown for Halloween. They would have people up there, speakers, bands, and there was little events going on throughout the city on Chestnut Street. But they would bring the thousands of people who come to town to participate. It was just something that people did. They'd have a good time for the weekend, or a Friday night. They would come out, and you would see this is Chestnut Street. It's nighttime, but there's the Academy. But you can just see groves of people that are coming out, and there would be little areas of different, people doing different events and that for celebrating Halloween, candies and ciders and little shows and that. But it was a weekend event. Meadville did that for years. They had big parades, huge parades, and again, but every little town you can see had something similar to that throughout the county over the years. Meadville has a presence with fire parades, just like our 4th of July, the fire parades, the county parades all over the area. Again, this is Meadville, and you can see there's quite a attendance here for the parades. It was something to do. It was people come out to see this stuff. It was interesting to see what was going on. And of course, Cochranton, we did our own events. 1776, 1976, the bicentennial year. I'm sure Mark's going to go over a lot of this stuff, and he does some of his other talks now. But again, each little community did their own little thing to support itself and promote itself over the years, and we're no different than the rest of them. These little shops here that did the fresh produce and that. This is here in Meadville on North Street, North Main by Baldwin Street. And we had Dean's Farm Market here in Carlton. Next picture here shows Cochranton Cash Grocery here in the corner. So a lot of the local farmers and that would sell their produce. and sell their items here. And it was common to, support your local markets that we had around here, and we still do it today. And of course, the market house in Meadville is one of the biggest, oldest ones around here that still does it today with their open air markets during the summer months, and then the weekends, and the little shops inside. Sidewalk sales, this is Meadville in the 70s. I'm sure somebody who's been up to Meadville, they used to do a lot of these sidewalk sales. The business would have their sales in the spring, get things going and that, having people come in and buy stuff and that. They had all kinds of sales going on, check out what they had, and people just walk around, had a good time with it. They had fashion shows going on at the same time, showing off the new fashion. This is 1968 or so. Showing off the new clothes, what they're wearing and that. So there was a lot going on, different times to show things off in the area. Merchants Bank, again, we talked about banks, but just the lower end of Water Street, again, the older buildings. But again, JCPenney was here, Singers there, the banks were there, Montgomery Wards. You had all those big names that were in downtown still at the time here. And again, of course, the big banks, of course, the big brick buildings there, they made their appearance known with their construction. Warren Smith Motors on Park Avenue, Meadville. You didn't see a lot of car lots in the city because of obvious reasons for space, but this is where Warren Smith started, later became Smith Gray Motors in Meadville. They moved up on the hill and later became Smith Gray Motors until they retired and closed down. The Park Congregational Church in Park Avenue, Chestnut, 1951. It was torn down in 59 and made way for JCPenney, but it was downtown, big church downtown. And what's just kind of neat about this picture, if you pay close attention to the church, next picture, we have the Presbyterian Church of Cochranton, right around the corner. Almost the same exact design of the building. So this was taken down to make way for the Crown Church that we have today. So again, I do a lot of talk on the churches in the area. The churches don't really change it much over the years, other than through the statics that taking the steeple down or changing some windows and that. But there's I do a whole lot of the churches of how they changed and locations, things like that. So another late night diner in Meadville, Huckleberry's was another place downtown. We have Wolf's Hardware next door, Wolf's store in town, which I'm sure a lot of you remember. Again, a lot of these little small diners, you didn't have Perkins or Applebee's or things like that. You had individual shops owned by individuals versus the chains that we all have out there today. Quality Market. This is the beginning, I call it the beginning of the end of the mom and pop era. This is 1959, Quality Markets. This is where Walgreens is today on North Street. You started seeing these in the 50s, the late 50s, these big box stores coming in and having everything. So instead of going to the bread store and going to get milk here and bread here and cheese here and meat here, they were all in one store. And the smaller shops couldn't compete with that. They were buying more, having more available, so the local mom and pops could never compete. And you started seeing the decline of the mom and pop shops at that point going out. And this here's Meadville, Low Laws, if you remember that. This is on North Main Street in Meadville, where the Northwest Bank is today. Again, these started popping up, and they had such variety of everything. You were doing it in one stop, just like Walmart is today. So this is where you started seeing a lot of those little shops going away because they couldn't compete with the bigger retailers. Again, just another downtown. If you remember Wolf's, we all remember Wolf's that had everything in it. The Darling Shop, again, the storefronts, you look at the window displays, they're showing off what they have to offer for sale. That was a big thing downtown, as long as what any other shop was. The Meadville Co-op, again, farming. Back in the day, everything was farming around here. As far back as you guys can remember, your parents, grandparents, friends were all there. This was farming area. And again, Meadville had the farming where they would come in and you'd bring your products in, they get serviced green. Here's King's Mobile Feed Service out by Little Cooley. And they would come to the farm with their mobile truck and grind your feed or whatever your seed and bag it for you and package it. If you couldn't bring it to town, it was too far, they would go through there. W.L. Dunn had trucks similar to this because of all the farming they did with their construction. They still had several farms, but they had this service for years. And of course, we had the Cochranton Co-op, which was the building still here today, had the same services. We serviced and catered to all the farmers in the area. It was farm country. What's neat is back in the 40s, W.L. Dunn Construction was big into the farming, and they would always put on displays or different types of shows for the people. This is a modern milking demonstration by W.L. Dunn. This is in the 40s. and they're in the Dunn garage downtown. They bring the cows in and show you what the new technology was for farming industry. And they did this for several times. They did this over the years. They did several of these in different locations where they bring people in and show off the advances in farming and such. And again, with the farming, Dunn had their presence here. This is up on Meadville, 1998, when they sold international trucks and tractors. We had the sales and service over here on North Franklin Street. Again, they sold the farm tractors, internationals, and they were big into, I mean, I'm sure there's not a person here that's owned a tractor that was probably sold by W.L. Dunn, or Lynn Dunn. But again, their presence was known in the farming community because this area was all farming. This is a picture of 322. We looked at the big eye in that roundabout earlier. We're looking towards Meadville. As you can see the sign, Meadville 4, Pittsburgh 88, Fairview 29. We've got the Esso station here again where the Beacon Inn would be. Narrow, little 2-lane roads, a 4-lane with a turning lane today, and big roundabout. How things have changed over the year. Here we are looking north at the intersection. We've got the Beacon Inn here, 322, but just a narrow 2-lane road with a stop sign. And, you know, it was a red light forever, and now they have a big roundabout there. But again, how things have changed from just a little 2-lane road with a little bit of berm to the big major 4-lane highways that we see today. Construction, I do a whole topic on construction and dates. Goes back to building bridges, roads, highways, buildings, you know, in the area, in the county, and throughout the county and that, and some of the major jobs that they've done in the interstate and that. And the biggest one I like to talk about is W.L. Construction Company. I grew up with the Dunns, Boots Dunn, very good friends with the family. Grew up with them. My family was very close to them and spent many years there as a kid with them. But we got Cubby Dunn, Boots Dunn, Jerry Dunn, built pretty much everything in this county and around here, road-wise, construction-wise, for 99 years. They were here doing what they do. Here's some early pictures of them on their old trucks. W.L. Dunn, Own 52, big old drag lines. But again, a mainstay in the construction industry in this area for decades, building everything, you know, digging roads, cement mixers, you know, gravel, everything. They did everything around here. Another big name was Kiebert's. We all know Kiebert Construction. Paul Kiebert here with a brand new Dodge dump truck. Brooks Brothers here in Meadville supplied their equipment here. They were standing in front of a brand new dump truck here that they bought. But again, Kiebert was another mainstay. Now he's retired and sold out. So another long time is gone. City Coal and Supply in Meadville is another big construction company around here. They did concrete, gravel, along with the other supplies that they did. Again, they were in Meadville for decades, and they were another mainstay that supplied us with a lot of work here. S.J. Groves is another big construction company in the area. This is building 322 going in Cochranton. Here's the Y going in town, 1964, and they're building 322 here. S.J. Groves did that, and it was a big construction project. And I can remember a lot of the stories where folks in town did not want that road to come through here because it would take away from their business, and it's true. You go to highway past something and you're gonna lose it, but it made it convenient travel from here to Franklin. This is the Smock Bridge in Meadville. We've all been in Meadville. We've all traveled across the bridge going into Vernon Township. While the bridge wasn't there in 51, they were starting to build. It was all houses. You had to go across the big blue bridge in Mercer Street to get into Vernon. But here they are building it in 1951. They're starting to approach here. Here the cranes are, say, the big beams that we drive over. Some people probably drive over every day. Here's the finished part here. We're looking towards the bridge. So on the right would be Beans gas station, Haas's restaurant, Plaza Bowling would be on the right. The plaza on the left here would be your Pizza Hut and everything on the left there. But back then it was nothing left. The bridge was just built. Now it's wide open real estate. Now we can build and develop. But there was a lot of Volkswagen dealership was built there early. Beans was there, and they're still there today. Just a lower picture here in the city of the diesel engine coming through, looking over the Smock Bridge. Amusement recreation. There's a lot around here. Expedition Park, Hind Lake Park, 1800s. This place was its own city in itself during its heyday. Again, large, had thousands of people who tour it there daily. You can probably remember your parents or grandparents or yourself going there as a kid, enjoying the time. But back in the day, this is how big the place was. Of course, you had the bathing house, you had the hotels, 4 hotels in the park, the dancing pavilion. Again, a good part of this stuff over the years met its fate by fire. Hotel Conneaut still there today. But again, the park's, it's not there anymore, but it was huge. It was the destination for everybody. My grandparents, my parents talked about as a kid coming up from Pittsburgh and staying there and, spending the weekend, but it's changed over the years. The rides, the Wild Mouse, Kittyland, there's so many rides and so many things that changed over the years at the park, but the diesel engine used to ride you around the train, people at the beach house, sitting on the beach house here in the water. I mean, who grew up around here didn't spend some time at the park or on the lake out there. Wonderworld, anybody remember Wonderworld? Ottawa Hill 322 there across from Hanks there. Short-lived, it was built there in 58. Cochranton Lake Park was still in its booming heyday. They built Fairyland Forest across from Cochranton Lake Park, and that's pretty much what killed Wonderworld, because it was going to be for the kids more than the adults and that. The next picture showed some of the stuff they were starting to build, the giant pumpkin and boot, which those were there, geez, probably through the 90s and 2000s, they were left over in that field there. But again, they were just built too late to try and compete with Cochranton Lake Park. They just couldn't do it, and it went under shortly after it got not even really fully operational, and it went under. We had our own little summer destination, Hollow Beach and 25. Cottages down through there, they're still today, it's grown today. But this was the main destination stay for a lot of the Pittsburghers that would come up here. They owned a lot of the cottages. But again, this was a destination resort area. This was considered a resort to come up to here and hang out along the waters. Again, they had their own mailing labels, they had, souvenirs, boating, fishing, hunting, bathing, dancing. They had a dance hall, they had a post office, they had all, little restaurants there to eat. They had all kinds of events going on throughout the summer. Riverside Inn in Cambridge Springs, another one, burnt down a few years ago. Again, they had the horse wagon to bring them in the 1800s and that, but it was a destination with the mineral waters and things like that they'd promote to have you come up to Cambridge. The Ryder Hotel in Cambridge Springs was a huge hotel, and it sat where Alliance College is today, where the women's prison is today, but it had 1,000 rooms in it, and it had 2 swimming pools in it, 2 bowling alleys, it had a racket court, everything in this facility, and it was the highest end in this part of the state where everybody came to get away. It had all the amenities you could have there, and in the early 1920s, there was a fire in one of the rooms, and it all burned down. There was no fire department back then. So it burned to the ground, but it was a huge, huge facility. And it had a train track to come up to service it, so there was a lot of people that stayed there, a lot of dignitaries stayed there, the president had stayed there. There was a lot of people that spent time there, but it was a huge facility that met its fate by fire and burned to the ground. So again, but areas where people could come and enjoy and get away, there was a lot of that in the area here that you would travel around in. I talk about weather, I talk about storms, I talk about different things. This is 1950 Meadville. Meadville set a record for the most snowfall in 24 hours. It was a November evening, it was a warm November, it was cold, but it was warm, and the weather system changed, and they had a wet, heavy, packed snow. And the record still stands today. You can Google it, it'll tell you about how much snow. It was 30, 40 inches or something fell like in 24 hours in Meadville. And just stopped everything because they're pushing it with dozers. You can tell by that snow, that's heavy, wet snow. And it just stopped everything. It took them days to get cleaned up here, and you can see the streets are just pushing snow, but people are going to work, people are driving, people, just another day. Winter's winter. We don't get the winters like they used to get, but again, that was a record-setting winter that's still there today. I do a whole bunch of topics. I'm a lifelong fireman at Cochranton. I'm currently assistant chief of the Vernon Central Fire Department now, but I've spent my years as a fireman, and I do a lot of talks on the fire service around the area. Again, this is our fire department here in Cochranton in the 1950s. Our service here in Cochranton has grown to be a top-notch department over the years. We've always updated equipment, kept things going, and kept improving in our services for our community and kept expanding with it. In the early days, when you did an ambulance, you called the funeral director. That's usually had the funeral car. They would come out, pick you up, and take you to the hospital. This is Fleming Funeral Home here in Cochranton. Had the ambulance service for years, and it was taken over by the fire department in the 70s. Again, with the local fire department here, your community supported you. And so this was your local townsfolk here. William Shorts, Harry Wood, Boots Dunn was the fire chief at the time. Chris Apos, David Stock, the later became fire chief, Dick Decker, Cubby Dunn was there, Tom Mudger, Dalton Dieter, and Bob Rose. We're all members of your community, but they also serve your community and help you out as members of the fire department. And here they're showing off some new equipment that they have here. Our local police officers back in the 60s. Cochran's always had a police force presence, a lot of different members over the years. There's a few of the young troopers here back in the day, and this is like 1969, I'm pretty sure. Picture was back in the day. Meadville Fire Department, I do a lot on the Meadville Fire Department. That's my biggest one I do is fire departments. They have the city volunteers in the city, and of course they come down to assist Cochran if we need to in the times. Again, I do a lot of talks on the fire department here in Meadville. Meadville Police Department, same way. Things have changed. Police cars have changed. The little heights and cars they got compared to the police cars today. I don't know if you guys remember Ed Rose, the Meadville City Police Department drove around a motorcycle. The city police up through the 70s had a motorcycle cop all the time. Jennings Graham, Ed Rose had rode motorcycles. Again, it was just a different time. They don't have a motorcycle anymore. State police, I do talks on the state police throughout the years. This is 1972. I don't know if you guys remember, I wish this was colored, but this when the state police cars were blue and yellow. I can just barely remember the cars being blue and yellow. It's when they were blue and yellow from the state. The hospital, I do a ton of stuff in the hospital. I've got boxes of photographs on how the hospital's changed. You can still see a little bit of the original building, and they built on, then they tore that down, they built onto the back, and then they leveled the front, and they built on again, and built, that hospital's undergone so much change over the year. This is City Hospital 1966, I've got tons on the hospital, doing talks on the hospital. Spencer Hospital, we have two hospitals in the city. This is Spencer Hospital across town, again, doing some remodeling there, and it's changed its whole appearance today. As things grow, they change, go on, and they eventually closed Spencer, now it's one hospital. But again, we have two hospitals in town. Some fires, floods, and disasters, really quick here. Mark had talked earlier, we saw a little video clip. This was the 62 fire in the main street, started in a hardware store. This is when the fire just started to get going here in the main strip here. And the next picture here, the whole block's pretty much burning here, and it burnt the block to the ground January 1962. Boots Dunn was fire chief. It was his first fire, the first year. So that was a pretty good awakening to be the burn the block down, your first fire as fire chief. Meadville, like any towns, had a huge fire history. The Lafayette Hotel, which we saw earlier, November 1955, the top 2 floors burned off in a fire. It started at 2 in the morning. Again, it was a big major fire in downtown, but every city, every town's had major fires. Again, 1978, the Iroquois Hotel in County Lake. If you come into County Lake, it was right on the left, right past the first red light. It burned in 1978, and I think there was one fatality there. And again, it was a sub-zero below freezing night there. Again, but there's always going to be the need for fire service and things like that in the neighborhood. January 59 flood, if you guys remember the big flood of 59 in Meadville here, this is where Beans is at. You can see the high water. This is the Park Avenue Plaza where things had flooded over, and they were dynamiting. And then they had the military came in with a dock to rescue some of the people that couldn't get out of the areas in the city and pull them around canoes and all that once the water started to go down. But Meadville was, just like us, we have our low areas. There was no Woodcock Dam, no Union City Dam. So when it would get far or the heavy rains, we would have flooding. And Meadville was no stranger to floods. It's just part of the history. This image here is real quick, is 1897, Meadville. It's the first day of the new trolley service. Before that, you had to walk or ride a horse in dirt street or a wooden sidewalk. So this was 1897 Meadville, started the trolley service. They had three miles of trolley track that ran through the city. You can see it's a grand event. They got the camera guys out on the wagons there taking pictures of the trolley. This is a big event to see. Now you can ride the trolley around town versus having to walk or take the horse or walk in the mud. But again, there's a whole, the story of the trolley service I do. The Meadville had their own power supply. They built their own cars. Everything was done in-house. You just didn't go buy a trolley car. They built them here. And eventually they would run trolley service clear up to Cameron Springs. It would run clear out to County Lake Park. It would run clear out to Lionsville. The trolley service would run everywhere. And there was they did a whole topic on the trolley service and everything in Meadville. And that's all I brought today. So again, I want to thank you for what I showed you here today. Again, there's so much other topics out there, sports and oddities and different events that different towns and cities do. And then the farther I go away from the city, it's lesser and less stuff that I can find. But again, there's just a lot of stuff that happened sports-wise and newsworthy events and that. But again, I've been collecting these pictures and negatives for years now and trying to put them all together and scan them and save them. And among the pictures now, I do a lot of collection of, I have a large collection of keepsakes, uniforms, advertising stuff, equipment, you name it, that I've been trying to archive. And Mark's very familiar with a lot of stuff that he's had. I've helped rescue stuff with Mark over the years to help save a lot of stuff for history. And again, tonight was just a little bit of what I do on a regular basis with my history stuff I do. And I just wanted to share with you guys and hope you enjoyed it. So, thank you.